Lord, I thank you for this time with my new friend Tyler. And Lord, I pray that not only is our conversation going to be a blessing and insight to those that listen to it, but just the back and forth between us will be something that will be substantial and supernatural. And Lord, we ask that we step aside, and God, we say that you have your way in this podcast. You give us the words to say. You give us the directions that we need to go. And Lord, I thank you for this divine connection, and I'm excited for what's in store in the future for both Tyler's life and my life. In your name, Jesus, we pray.
Amen. Amen. That was good, bro. That was good. I appreciate that. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Kingdom Business Interviews. Today, we're going to be interviewing Dustin Wallace. Dustin's going to tell us a little bit about himself, and we're going to kind of dive into his story. And just to give you a little context, Dustin is actually in the same space, doing podcasts, similar to what I've got going on. He's a lot farther along than I am. But we'll get there one day, and this is good for me too. So this is like a positive kind of little coaching class for free here for me from you. He also does coaching, and he also does social media. What is it? Marketing and management.
Some of that stuff.
Okay, cool. So we'll get into all that.
Sure.
And so here on Kingdom Business Interviews, we're all about unlocking the faith in entrepreneurship. And so if you're an entrepreneur and you're just getting started, or you've never started a business, or you have a business and you're struggling, the ultimate goal here is to just basically unlock the faith, because if you don't have faith in business, 9 times out of 10 you're going to give up and your business is going to fail, and then you just never get the courage or the enough hope to start back up again. And so the goal here is to get you through that and get you closer to Jesus so that you can unlock that faith and keep going and ultimately become successful. So I'm excited to unpack your story today. I've got some questions for you, but first, to start off, I want to go ahead and just kind of give them context, give them a little bit of your story, your background, and then I'll kind of ask some more questions from there, and hopefully we'll get into some deep stuff that you're willing to share.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, vulnerability is our super strength, so I'm excited to see where our conversation goes. But to answer who is Red, I love that you open up with that. In my podcast, I love to ask my guests that opening question, and I would answer it with the story. I'll take you back a little bit. I think about when I was young. I think about from the earliest of my days. I was playing sports. I was that high performer. I always had that drive to do something great. I knew something was inside of me. I had that capability. I just didn't know what. So I went after many things. I always also felt creative. And in the various lanes of what I was doing, fast forward to about my sophomore year in high school, it was like 2008. I know that's probably dating myself. But man, I just fell in love with the art form and the culture of hip hop music. So I just started rapping, and I had a beat-up, hand-me-down Dell laptop. I had this free Audacity program. I actually had the Rock Band mic from the Xbox, and I plugged it in because it had a USB. Made my first rap.
I can relate to that.
It was absolute trash. My first rap was awful. But for whatever reason, I just was determined to learn this and grow in this. So that's what I did for a majority of high school into when in college. I was like, if I go to Full Sail University online for music production, I'll learn how to make my own beats, record my own music at the highest of quality, and they'll send me a MacBook and all the stuff to do it. So I was game for it. So 2014, I'd been serving faithfully at this church. It was actually in Sulphur Springs, Texas, not too far from here. And
we're in Royce City, Texas, at Renew Coffee.
That's right.
I forgot to say that. Thank you for mentioning that. Reminded me of that. Yeah, Royce City, Texas, Renew Coffee in downtown Royce City. That's where we're at right now.
Definitely, yeah. Check them out. Great coffee, great people, kingdom entrepreneurs.
Yes. I'm actually going to be interviewing him. So
hey, there we go.
It's coming up next.
There we go. But yes, so I found myself serving for those between 2011 to about 2014, come to find out that my youth pastors then felt led to plant a church in Royce City. And I'd been serving faithfully at that church, running sound, learning a lot of that, still going to school for music production, still thinking rap was the thing. So that was still in the forefront of my mind in this moment. And within that, so fast forward, we planned in 2014, and about 2016, the CEO of a fairly successful, I like to call her kind of like a biblical life coach kind of thing. She had a YouTube channel that had, at the time, I think 90,000 subscribers. Somewhere
That's
in
awesome.
there.
That's
Great.
huge.
Huge. And her CEO served at our church, was a part of the church, saw how I was faithfully serving the church, and he approaches me. He's like, "Do you know anything about video?" And I'm like, "A little bit, mostly about audio, as you can tell. I'm sitting there running the board." And for whatever reason, he wanted to take a chance on me to be their media department, because they were a small team and they were expanding. So sure enough, I was a part of this ministry, learned so much about email marketing, about ClickFunnels, about what it is to sell products, what it is to create social media posts. I learned Photoshop, Premiere, all those things. Again, at the time, not realizing what I would use it for today, not realizing maybe I would potentially teach other people about it. And then so I'm into that, and it's 2016, and I'm doing that, and then on my after hours, I'm recording an album, because I'm still going to be the rapper. I felt like God was telling me to lay down rap for good. Like, don't go pursuing it as a career. Sure, you can, occasionally do it for fun, but that's not the path he has for me. And
I got a verse here, Proverbs 16:3. Commit your work to the Lord, and your plans will be established.
a lot of my coaching work, I like to look at the dark side of people's strength, because a lot of times we don't think about that.
Right.
But the dark side of your strength when you're a visionary is you can almost get in the way for what God really has for you.
Absolutely.
Like we get confused, and we think that opportunities is obedience. But sometimes the obedience looks like putting down an opportunity that could bring us a huge amount of income.
Right.
But what he has in store further down the road 10x is that.
Right. Yeah.
And it's that hard distinction that we have to make sometimes as business owners, as entrepreneurs, is what I'm doing in the will of God, is what I'm doing for God, with God, or is it just me doing my thing thinking God's going to bless it? And that's a whole...
Or is it the enemy disguising as something of God and bringing us something that looks good on the surface that's actually detrimental to us? Yeah.
Come on, that's so good. So I find out, that's a pivotal point. I set down rap as a career, and then I'm still doing the social media video editing thing for this job, and there was this weird limbo season. It's almost like I felt like I kind of went into hiding. Now, sure, at the time, I'm still serving faithful at my church. I'm playing drums at my church, still do. Great thing I'm passionate about, which that's another piece to the puzzle of the things that I do as an entrepreneur.
Music. You're passionate about music.
Yeah,
Just to generalize that.
Yeah, generalize that. Which was cool when you had Russ on the show, which was a great episode. If you haven't seen it, go check it out.
Yeah, Russ is an awesome guy.
Yeah, he's a super cool guy. I definitely need to connect more with him. But I digress. And it's that idea of, it was such a pivotal point for me to decide, okay, the thing that I found identity in wasn't who I was, it was what I do. And I feel like that's kind of an epidemic we see, especially in America, is when you meet someone new, one of the first things you ask them is, what do you do? Not who you are, not what are you passionate about, what do you do? Yeah. And oftentimes, a lot of us will form identities around our career.
I'm guilty of that.
Yeah, same. I mean, that's why I began to do the work that I do, helping entrepreneurs specifically, because I get that. I experience that. I understand that it's very easy to get caught up in the doing and not in the being.
Seeing the dark side of it, though, and I never really did until I started seeking God myself.
That's good.
Is life-changing.
Yeah, so life-changing. And this is 2018, I kind of really started seeing this journey for what it was. And then come 2020, wildness happens, obviously. And within that, I felt like the Lord was leading me to quit the job that I was at. And for the first year of my son's life, because we found out my wife was pregnant somewhere in that time frame. I was supposed to just be fully committed to serving my church and being a stay-at-home dad, which is hard for me because as a man, especially as a man of God, you want to provide financially for your family.
Right.
And I was like, God, are you sure that's really you? Like, I'm supposed to step away and do this? But it was so amazing that within that year, so much, he spoke so much into my life that I'm now carrying now to this that I'm building and helping other men with. Because most of my life, I lived burnt out like it was a badge of honor. Like, my job isn't to tell someone what to think or give them the exact plan, the blueprint that worked for me so it will work for you. I believe that it's really a unique, tailor-made thing for each individual person. And the faith aspect is huge too, because I feel like we truly are in a partnership with God. And a big portion of all the work that I do is I can't stress enough. Obviously, first step, you need Jesus in your life.
100%.
Second step is you need to have peace of mind and heart. I will say that men's mental health is so important. And I think it's really great that we're seeing it begin to come to the forefront.
Yes.
And it is a big pillar of what I work on with my clients, is because if you want to have a better business, if you want to have better relationships with your wife and kids, if you want to have a better outlook on your physical health, holistically, it starts with your mindset.
Yeah.
And it starts with how you see yourself and how you see others.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Going into what you're doing now for your
Yes.
business and your podcast and your social media marketing and advertisement and management and stuff like that, was there ever a point in time where you were just like, because I know you said that God had basically said, hey, I don't want you to go down the path of this music, the rap anymore.
Yeah.
I want you to go down this path over here. Was there ever a point in time where it just got to the level of difficulty to where you were just like, man, maybe this isn't my calling? Where you started losing faith, you know what I'm saying? Because I feel like during that time, once you really started trying to start your business and everything like that, you're pretty close to God, you're building your relationship with God and everything like that. But was there a point in between there that got super difficult to where you were just like, wanting to give up?
I say that point always comes. There's always going to be moments when that happens, because when we choose to step into this life of the unknown, and
right.
I mean, I'm sure plenty of entrepreneurs that are watching at home know that exactly. It's funny, I saw it put, like, if you really want to learn to have faith in Jesus and to grow in your relationship with Jesus, become an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because as you know very well, I feel like but again, it goes back to we have the choice, and it goes back to what we surround ourselves, what we feed ourselves with. I stopped putting garbage in for garbage to come out. Mm-hmm. So I began to start listening to the Les Browns, the Tony Robbins, and I started listening to audiobooks. And I feel like for me, that was a major key, was the listening to the audiobook, because I
started changing the quality of what you're intaking.
It was what I was hearing.
Yeah, what are you intaking?
For so much of my life, I was listening to Lil Wayne, Drake. I was listening to nonsense.
Yeah.
And when I made that shift into not only worship music, when it did come to music side, listening to worship music, listening to Christian rap, listening to the things that were edifying me and building me up and building others up, not tearing them down, that was a huge shift. And I feel like that's one important milestone to think of too. And I would ask those at home, really look at what you're consuming. Because obviously you're consuming something great watching us guys. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to pat myself on the back too hard, but
we're talking about Jesus. Yeah. We're talking about business, and we're seeking Him. We're going over Scripture. So I mean, this is good cleansing, healing consumption.
Definitely. No, but I say all that to say is, yes, there are times, and usually when I do experience those times of feeling like giving up, I'm grateful that I have the tools now to see why.
Right.
And I feel like if you might be listening at home and you might be feeling that right now. You might be feeling like, I can't make payroll. I've got people I've got employees I need to pay, and the recession is looming. And yes, those are real problems. Those are big money problems, have even bigger problems. And I say all that to say is, take a step back and look at look at what you're consuming. Look at how much time you're spending with God, because it's very easy. Again, it goes back to...
I love that you said how much time, too, because the amount of time that we spend on these negative things that are not doing good things for us, that are actually like toxic to us, we don't really recognize. And it's just like this. It goes the same with like, okay, your finances too. The more you spend, you say, oh, well, it's only $1 here, $1 there, $2 here. Well, if it's only 5 minutes here, 3 minutes here, 10 minutes here of us consuming all of this garbage, that adds up over time, and you don't ever get that time back.
No.
And what goes in must come out.
Come on.
And so, love what you're saying there.
What the scripture says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. I might be butchering it, but it's essentially that. I'm paraphrasing the red paraphrase of it, but essentially that's what it's saying. But yeah, no, I love what you mentioned there, and I think another practical tool, and it's been done in a few different ways, but I feel like for this specific moment, I would like to call it the attention audit. And you listening at home, you can pause, do it later, but I want you to get out a piece of paper or some form of way that you can write this down. And at the top of it, actually, I want you to draw a line down the middle, and then at the top of it, I want you to write on one side energizers and on the other side drainers. And on the energizers side, I want you to write down all the tasks that you do, or all the things that take your attention, that energize you, that build you up, that edify you. And then on the flip side, the drainers, write all the stuff that you're consuming that drains you. Maybe it's the news, maybe it's social media. I'm guilty of it as well. It's easy to doom scroll. And write that list. And on that list, you're gonna have energizers, drainers. Now, I want you to look at all the things that drain you. And I want you to think about how can you either delegate it, automate it, or eliminate it. Now, in this instance, a lot of it is eliminating because if it's for your attention, eliminate it. Now, if you're a business owner, sometimes it's these tasks that drain you. Like for me, I video edited most of my working career. It's still something that's the bane of my existence. And as soon as I'm at the level that I want to hire that person, that's definitely going to be off of my plate. Or you think of things, I mean, we look at AI. We look at artificial intelligence, ways that we can automate those things. And a lot of people want to demonize AI. And I understand, but robots aren't going to take over the world because Jesus is going to come back.
Well, anyways. Here's the way I look at it, is like, you can use anything for good, or you can use it for bad.
Exactly.
It's the same thing with a gun is a gun.
Big facts.
It's a bad thing when it's in the hands of a bad person, an evil person, and it's a good thing when it's in the hands of a good person. So I kind of look at it like that.
That's so true. And I agree. But yeah, I want you to really take the time, and I suggest that you take the time and do that exercise, because that's an exercise I have to bring myself back to time and time again. And it's one that I've used with my clients and seen results time and time again. But yeah, man, I
love that, dude. That's awesome. I'm glad you shared that.
It's such an encouraging thing, and it's a simple thing. Something I've learned a lot in my need for personal development and growth is a lot of the cliches, a lot of the simple things. They're cliches because they're truths, and we get sick of hearing them all the time. But if we would just apply them. Like I look at it, for instance, I mentioned how I'm a drummer. I drum for my church, and I've been blessed to be able to teach some drummers as well. That's why Russ's podcast was like, oh, that's interesting. I might have to reach out to you and see how you structured some of that. But anyways, I say this to say that a lot of when I started teaching drums, a lot of what I realized was the mastering of the basics. And I feel like that's something that could be applied through whatever it is, whatever arena that you're in,
across the board,
is that mastering those basics. Like the idea of breathing. When we take control of our breathing, then we'll see crazy effects across the board, even spiritually. Because again, you think about it, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And what more distraction and deception would happen if the enemy attacks us physically in a way that we can't take control of our physical being. And that's where the breath work comes in for me. And I think that's so interesting. But
it's good for your health too.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know if you follow Gary Brecka.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Gary talks a lot about breath work.
Yeah, super similar.
Stuff. Yeah.
Super similar. But yeah, I say all that to say, Not really sure where that tangent was going, but I say that to say is that it's so important to look at our lives in that way, is because we have more control over our lives than we think, and at the same time, as entrepreneurs, as business owners, we can try to control the uncontrollables.
I think a lot of people are afraid to backtrack and go back to those basics.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
And I'm guilty of it too. I mean, there's been plenty of times where I get to the point and I'm just like, okay, what do I do now? Yeah. And in hindsight, looking back, I could have just turned around and be like, okay, well, I just need to go back and fix this real quick, and then I'll be right back. We'll be good. But since I didn't, it's like detrimental things happen.
Seriously, that reminds me, my business mentor, Myron Golden, amazing man of faith, and I was recently reading one of his books, and he was explaining how if we could use, and I love this analogy, if we could view our business as a building, so literally we're viewing it as a building, and each floor would be a level that would make the building go up, and we need to master each level before we go to the next level.
Right.
And it's great to think of it that way, because so many times in our business and our lives, we always think we need to be further ahead. And I believe that if we took the time, a lot of my motto is to slow down to speed up. Meaning if we took the time to really dive into what we need to learn in this season, how that's really going to build the foundation we need for the next season. Like I mentioned it before, the quote, our next is connected to our now. Like if we just took the ownership of what we're doing with what's in our hand right now,
yes,
what that would bless the next season.
From where we are, when we are right now, yes.
Yeah, because I think of it back when I was, I bust tables for a long time.
I've been there.
And I was busting tables when I was right out of high school, and it goes back to what you feed yourself is what's going to come out. I can remember mopping the floors and listening to Pastor Stephen Furtick, listening to all these motivational speakers. I could have listened to trash music, but I listened to that. But also in that moment, I took ownership of that position. And it was in that I learned things, like new things of how to better clean my house. Right. And it's funny, you don't think about the things that you learn.
Yeah.
Or I think in my years of rap, what brought me most alive when I rapped was when I performed live. Because the beauty of being on stage, basically public speaking, was that you get to ravel in and intricately put these different stories within these songs. Like, yeah, I loved performing the songs, don't get me wrong. Right. But it was the story and the speaking between it that connected it all. And I see that season of learning how to tell a story, learning how to read a room, I think I've got an idea for a YouTube video of the 10 things I learned from 10 years of rap. But I say all that to say, good one. But I say all that to say is literally look at what's in your hand and what you can do right now. And a lot of times we get shiny object syndrome. A lot of times we get so focused on the comparison trap of others, thinking we got to be further this way, thinking that we've got to be like this person. What's God called you to do? What's God called you to do? And I feel like that's such an important thing for us to grasp.
A small, deep-rooted tree is more fruitful than a big, shallow-rooted tree.
Come on, so true.
And it's like that. I don't know if you ever seen that quote with the iceberg, with the picture of the iceberg. It's not necessarily a quote, but it's like a meme.
It's the photo, and it's like
yeah.
It's huge.
And it'll say like success and financial freedom and all this stuff at the top, above the surface of the water, and it's like the little tip.
Yeah.
And then below the water, you can't
all
see
the things,
all the setbacks, all the failures, all the trials and tribulations.
That's so good.
All of the betrayal, all of the negative and evil and dark things that they've had to go through along their journey. That, God may not have done all, but God allowed you to go through those things to mold you and shape you into what you ultimately needed to be to get to where you wanted to be and to get where He wanted you to be, more importantly. And, until you realize that and you really start to, take that in, soak that in and believe it, wholeheartly, it's going to be a tough road. It's going to be a tough road regardless, but it's going to be even more tough if you're out there on your own and you don't accept the help that's there for you to grasp, So I love that, man. So, but let me go back and ask you this.
Yeah,
How much time? You good on time?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm great on time.
Okay. Let me ask you this. During the time where you shifted and you started your YouTube channel, just talking about your YouTube channel now, because I think you're like, what, 900 followers or something, subscribers
Yeah,
or something?
we're right about 800 right now.
See, that's awesome, man. That's about 10x what I'm
It's
at.
time.
I'm at
It takes
139.
time.
I was super excited. I'm at 139 now, and I was like super excited because I grew that from like 20 within like a month or two.
Yeah.
So it's like, I guess my question for you is, what was the hardest time of growing your channel to where it is now, where you were just like, you got to the point to where, you were just like, man, you're just thinking about giving up. And then what did you do to overcome that? Because obviously you have, because you're still going and you're still trucking.
It.
You haven't given up and you're still keeping the faith.
I appreciate it. It's that idea of keep showing up.
Love it.
And it's, again, such a cliche, such a basic, but there was
Well,
time.
it's like you talked about, going back to the basics.
Yeah, and it's like, because I can think, so I literally started my podcast started in 2018. And back then, again, it came off of an encouragement from my pastor. My pastor sent me a Lewis Howes School of Greatness.
I love that. I love that channel.
And he had the 5 Minute Fridays.
Okay.
And I was literally in Planet Fitness at the time, about to go to my job, editing videos, and I get this text, and it's like, I can see you doing this. And at the time, it was literally, again, and I think a big one is low barrier of entry. Like, what's the least steps it takes to get you putting the content out there, to doing it. So for me, I literally just audio, and because of my music and my rap background, I liked putting a little music behind it. So I would find some royalty-free music, and I would just go 5 to 8 minutes, and it was little motivational Mondays, and that's where I started.
I love that.
It's that idea of just getting started, again, going to what's in your hand and how can you use it. Yeah. And from there, it grew into, I started doing video because I was around video and I saw that channel. So the channel I worked for, we went from 90,000 subs to 150 by the time I left. So being a part of that growth was really cool. To not only like,
that's awesome.
And being able to test things on a bigger scale was really encouraging to me. Yeah. But doesn't really.
They had some more momentum going, so you got to be around that and see how all that was happening.
That was what really helped me in the beginning stages of really doing the channel, was seeing the possibility.
Right.
Because but also it can be crippling. Like the dark side of that strength was when I really started making videos on my own. I thought, okay, so the place I work for, she has a teleprompter. She literally had a full studio, lighting. She had staging, 3-camera setup, expensive 3-camera setup, and I'm thinking in my head, it's got to be on that level.
Right.
And it's got to be perfect. And then I follow a lot of really well-polished, oiled machines as far as YouTube channels.
That's where I drug it out so long before I started as well. Sure. I was just like, man, I can't start with what I have.
Yeah. And I feel like, and this is beautiful, as I even studied today about YouTube and seeing some of the experts say that we're in this beautiful time of a new era of YouTube where we see the vlog style come back, but not like Casey Neistat vlog style, not like Mr. Beast overproduced vlog style. We see people like Sam Sulek,
raw
literally
stuff.
There's a Bible guy, he's a country guy with a cowboy hat, older guy, literally just put your phone up on video and press record, and just speak and be yourself. And I think that's really encouraging right now, because
100%.
More so than ever, even if you're a business owner, just having someone follow you along through your day and posting it, because people care and they're looking for that human connection. And the more authentic and real you can be, the more important, like the more connected the audience out there will be.
I love you said that, because it's truth.
Yeah.
And that's God's, that's what God wants. That's what God gives us, is truth. And so when we start dipping off into the deception, which is the realm of the enemy, like, bad things happen.
Yeah, and that goes back to those times that, it's super hard. I can remember my channel didn't break 100 subscribers for years.
Wow.
And there was a moment, it was so cool, I saw it on my my memories, I think on Facebook or on Instagram or somewhere, and I was celebrating that I made it to 150, and that was a year ago, like a few months ago. And then I look at my channel and I've got 780, almost 90, 790. We're right there at 800.
Yeah.
But to see that,
Yeah.
and that was in a year of me just choosing to be even more intentional with the posting. And I think a lot of it was that. But yeah, there was a season where with my podcast, it was me recycling older episodes for almost a year.
Yeah.
Because I was burnt out, but I was still so committed to putting something out there.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the things that kept me going, is checking the commitment, but also checking the why. Like I love what one of my coaches said, that it's not just only why, it's why 7 times. Because a lot of times we ask people, and I've done this exercise with some of my clients, and I think it's great, is a lot of times we ask, okay, why are you doing what you're doing? Okay, that you answer that. Why are you doing that? You answer that. Why are you doing that? 7 times deeper. Because a lot of times the goals that we set are more about what achieving that goal will make us feel. It's always the goal behind the goal.
Get a little bit more intentional and get a little deeper with your intentions.
It's always the goal behind the goal. Because if your goal is to get rich and famous, that's cool and all.
But why do you want to be rich and famous?
Exactly. And if the why behind you wanting to be rich and famous is to be rich and famous, I'm sorry, sweetie. I'm sorry, bro. But it's not going to last long. And a lot of times when we see fast fame, we see it fade even faster, because the gifts that got them to the room, their character couldn't keep them in the room. And I feel like that's such a huge thing. And again, this is me years into 365 YouTube videos into making this, and more so than just putting in the work, being surrounded by the mentors and the coaches and the pastors that are going to speak the truth in love. And I think that that's a very important part in our lives, because a lot of the glamour of being an entrepreneur is the idea of not having a boss. And that's great. And at the
Still
end,
got a boss though.
At the end of the day, who can fire you? Because I feel like a lot of people, and unfortunately, we're seeing people in the faith communities, we're seeing a lot of impact and moral misconduct, and we're seeing those things. If you feel like you want to give up, again, it goes back to that why. And then the why behind the why behind the why, because you've got to think about what makes me come alive. What makes me want to get up in the morning? And if you have that and you keep that in front of you, then you're going to keep getting up in the morning.
Yeah.
And for me, it's the impact that I can make for men. I think of like a younger me. I think of the me that was following Jesus, that thought he had it figured out, but really had no idea what was going on. I think about the me that thought that burnout was a badge of honor. The me that thought that I had to achieve and get award and perform, when at the end of the day, I'm already loved for who I am. And I think that that's at our core as human beings. A lot of the things we struggle with is that idea of I'm not good enough. And I feel like if we can understand and grasp that we are good enough because he's good enough, and he who is in us is working through us. And
So I think the problem is the disconnection from that. So I guess my question now would be, what in the moment did you do? Like, what are some of the things that you did that got you back on track, that got you back and reconnected you back to that faith?
That's a great question. I would say that when I was in those moments in the depths of despair, it was a combination of not living there. Because a lot of times, like, our life is peaks and valleys.
So recognizing that you've gotten disconnected.
Yeah. And a lot of times we don't recognize right away.
Exactly.
And it's important to have those checks as you go. And I think that putting in the daily practice of checking where you're at.
Yeah.
And having those people in your life that are going to help check where you're at. I think those are 2 huge ones. Yeah, because it's so easy to set up a camp in the valley, but don't make it a permanent home.
So, but that's the base. Mm-hmm. That's the basic. So once you recognize, hey, I'm in this dark space,
Yeah.
then what are some of the things that
Got
you
you.
started doing
Got
from
you.
there that got you
Gotcha.
reconnected?
So the first step is recognize, and then the next step would be reorganize. It's funny because I have a whole 5R system for it.
See,
And-
we're a little disconnected. Now we're getting back on track.
Yeah. So you've got the recognize, because the first step is you have to have the awareness that something is going on, and then you have to reorganize your approach at it, because a lot of times it goes back to the patterns of our lives, and we've got to interrupt that pattern. So
Yes.
we reorganize that, and then when we reorganize it, we also have to go back and rediscover who we are.
Absolutely.
So once we rediscover who we are, then we go into
So that's when you get reconnected.
Yeah,
right there.
Yeah, it's right there. That would probably be like a
Yeah.
third RB. Like,
The plug's starting to get in the wall.
Yeah. So you recognize, you reorganize, you rediscover, and then you start to rebuild. Because a lot of times it goes back to the chiseling metaphor. Like you've got to take away what's not you and start rebuilding the parts that are you and what you're supposed to be doing. And then from the rebuilding, once you've got it well established, then you refine it. And I think the refinement is just as important, because when you get into the refinement stage, you think about, okay, I'm getting back there. That's kind of your maintenance stage.
Yeah.
Like for instance, you can't just never get an oil change or your car explodes again. I'm not a mechanic by any means, but I even know.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you never get an oil change, your car will deteriorate.
Yeah.
When you get to the refinement stage, that's what helps you not have to go back. Because if you stay with the refinement stage, if you stay in that community of people that is going to hold you accountable, that is going to check in with
So
you.
fellowship,
Yeah, fellowship. would
reaching
be
back
that.
out to your community and your brothers in
Yeah.
Christ. You know, that was so that's a big one.
Yeah.
And that's been a big one for me. I mean, just recently, there was a point in time where I was just like, man, what do I do about this? You know, and I'm not going to speak on that thing specifically, but I ended up reaching out to my life group, one of the guys at my life group, and had a conversation with them, reconnected back, got myself back in alignment with God, and I was like, oh, this is easy.
Yeah.
What am I tripping about?
Come on.
You
Let's
know,
go.
and so it's crazy how quick that can happen, but it's also vice versa. It's crazy how quick you can get disconnected too.
1000%. No, that's so good. And I think that's such a crucial step, is staying connected to that community and staying connected to those people that you can be vulnerable with. I
Yeah.
touched on it a little bit at the beginning. Like I have a community group, life group that I lead, and we call it Let's Talk About It, and it's men specifically.
I like that.
And the beauty of it is, I mean, at some point, sometimes multiple points within, we have different semesters, we have breaks in between. I love to ask the question of, what do you want us not to know about you? Yeah. And you'll be amazed how close knit, and of course, you can't just go asking that to a complete stranger.
Right.
Again, when it comes to vulnerability and sharing, the beauty of vulnerability is it is a gift. And it's not to be shared with everyone, but it is to be shared with someone that matters. But I say that to say is you'd be so surprised what freedom is on the other side of that courageous conversation. Because a lot of times in our lives, we don't want to have those hard conversations because we're afraid of either hurting ourselves, looking stupid, or just messing up the relationship.
So let's just backtrack a little bit and go back to, you're still growing your YouTube channel. We talked a little bit about some challenges that you overcame on the way to growing that channel, and some setbacks and stuff that you kind of powered through back leaning on your faith. So now when it comes down to your business now, with your social media management and everything like that, what got you into that, and what led you into, kind of going in that direction? Was it kind of the same stuff?
Honestly, so the social media management for me is a stepping stone in itself because when I was working for that ministry, that's what a lot of what I did: video editing, social media managing. I made thumbnails, I used Photoshop, all that stuff. So I have a knowledge there. It's not necessarily a forever passion for me, But it brings me to a thought that one of the coaches that I'm a part of mentioned, and it's called the sex versus cash theory. And it's intriguing. You hear it, you're like, sex versus cash theory. And I feel like there's a lot of times in life that we have this sexy project in our mind.
Yeah.
And that's what we will do ultimately. But before that, there are seasons when we need to make the cash.
Right.
So
Okay.
we have to frame them in a way of knowing what the project is we're doing, what the venture is we're doing, in a way that we understand what its purpose is.
That's a fun way of looking at it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because I mean, for instance, like I look at it for people that may be out there, and you may have to take the dead end job, the 9 to 5 for a season.
Right.
And
right.
that is fueling the passion to put into the investment of it. Like, for instance, the podcasting. Like when I was starting the podcast, I was still working full time for that ministry, making a decent salary. And that was funding, okay, now I can put some ad spend. Now I can put some money into better equipment. And
Yeah.
you're thinking, and I feel like that's another way to not get discouraged of your now. Because sometimes the now that is connected to the next isn't directly connected, but it's a form of cash flow.
I guess you could say trials and tribulations that come along with that is being in that and then still choosing to do the right thing and devote yourself to doing a good job and staying in
Exactly.
alignment with God with that thing, even though you don't really want to do that.
Exactly.
But that is where God has you in this moment, in that moment. And so it's like, if you don't, still do the right thing and still stay diligent and stay in alignment in that space.
Exactly.
It's like you're kind of setting yourself up for failure with what you really do want to do, because God's using that vehicle that you're in right there to get you to where you really want to be ultimately. And so it's like, unless you do the things that you need to do in that space to, grow and learn and I guess you could say allow him to mold you,
For sure.
then you're kind of setting yourself up for failure there. I think that's kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah.
And that's been a big struggle for me to kind of not necessarily realize and recognize that, but to accept it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, like I was talking about in there before we started recording, it's like I've always tried to kind of dip out of what I was doing and go do something else. And in doing that, it would distract me. It was almost a distraction and an excuse as to why I wasn't doing what I should have been doing with where I was working for another company at the time, the 9 to 5, the cash part of the sex and cash, but as the cash part, you still have to stay in alignment with God and do the right thing in that space. And ultimately, doing that will set you up better for what you really want to do. So I think that's awesome that you kind of distinguished that there, because I wasn't expecting you to do that.
For sure.
So
For
I'm
sure.
glad
Yeah.
you
Because
did.
for me, I'm really not, and this is other people's words, not my own. I'm really good at seeing what it takes for a social media account to be successful.
Yeah.
And I can implement that, but what brings me more alive is to teach others and to show others how to do that for themselves.
Yeah.
It's that whole analogy, like if you give someone a fish, they're going to eat for a day, but if you teach someone to fish, they're going to eat for their life.
Yes.
And then they're going to carry it down if you teach them how to teach someone to fish.
Yes.
Even deeper layer of it. Obviously, we wouldn't be to that point yet. But yeah, I say that to say the people that are that have the most freedom of time and finance are those that are able to explain something at its most simplest form in a way that it unlocks for other people.
Yeah.
And that's what really got me into coaching as a whole, and even just being a content creator, even like a thought leader, you could say, is because if we can find how, we all have unique perspectives. We all have unique understandings and knowledge. And how can you teach someone else that? Like we're even talking to our buddy that owns the coffee shop.
Yeah.
I know a guy that opened a coffee shop, and then he learned how to successfully make coffee carts. So like you see like different events, you think of church events, they need a coffee cart because why not have a coffee at your Christian event? Because everyone loves coffee.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
So he learned the coffee cart, he took it a step further. He learned the business behind the coffee cart, how to promote it, how to market it, how to sell it.
Yeah.
He taught people how to make their own coffee cart.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, I feel like that's where the future of entrepreneurship is going, especially online business is going, is this idea of coaching and consulting. Is we all have a unique skill, and how if you're in that vein of teaching, because a lot of people aren't, but if you are leaning into that idea of, if I can teach someone how to do this, then how much more can I buy my time back? I even think another one of my business ideas, and I haven't fully talked a ton about it, I guess I'll let your audience know in on it, is being passionate about drums and learning drums from a worship drummer perspective. I've got this idea of making a course that takes someone from complete beginner to playing their first song in 30 days. And like, that's a bold claim, but it's possible.
Right.
And making and setting up that whole system, which would take a lot of front end work, sure, but it combines the knowledge and expertise I have with all the different areas of the marketing sides, the social media sides, and my actual skill set that they're learning, and being able to teach it in a way that they're learning it, but do it in such a way that I'm buying my time back. And I think that that's really why we get into entrepreneurship to begin with. Like I heard you were mentioning earlier, that's why it's so alluring and
sexy.
Yeah, that's why it's so sexy, because who doesn't want to make their own schedule? Who doesn't want to have the time to go where they want to go with their family and make those memories?
It brings that opportunity for freedom a lot closer to your reality.
Yeah.
Than just sticking in a day job, throwing some money in a 401k for 40 years of your life, and then hoping you got enough money to live comfortably for the rest of your life after you retire. That's not sexy.
And I feel like and it's tough too, because a lot of times I feel like we've been sold a lie of the American dream for a long time.
Right.
A lot of our lives, especially in the education system, we're sold this dream of, you get married, you get 2.5 kids, you have a house with a picket fence, you have a car that's, a decent model. And to do so, we run the risk of going in debt to look rich.
Right.
And it goes back to that idea of...
Or to have that American dream. Have
the American dream. And I would challenge that idea. And I think that the new American dream would be finding that freedom and that peace of mind to be content where we're at, and also see how we can build his kingdom. Because it goes back to that whole theory.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if we truly consider ourselves as kingdom business owners, kingdom entrepreneurs, we have to be reminded that if we're not careful, we'll start building our kingdom and not building his kingdom.
Right.
And they can look real similar, and they can be real close, but in the truth is it's not.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's really interesting. Even like we were discussing earlier, that idea of there are some Christian business owners that wouldn't want to tap into that reality of who they are. And this ties into this thought
connecting
of
their business to Christianity.
Connecting their business to Christianity. And I would say, even from a social media marketing managing mindset, some of the most viral content is the most polarizing. Like, you can't deny it's going, like, the provocative thing that you see online on social media, that's what rises to the top. And I'm not saying go be polarizing for the sake of being polarizing, but I am saying that if you stand on something, stand on it.
Right.
Like, I love the quote, and I mentioned it I was doing a podcast today for my own channel. I mentioned that quote from there's the Broadway show Hamilton.
Okay.
And the quote from one of the main leads, he says, "Smile more, talk less. Don't let them know what you're against or what you're for." And I said it backwards: talk less, smile more. Don't let them know what you're against or what you're for.
That reminds me of the verse, James, where it says, I forget what exact number, but I just went over it the other day, and it says, be quick to listen, slow to speak and slow to get angry.
Yeah, it's similar and
Similar, yeah.
Yeah,
No.
it's similar but from his angle, he's meaning it from a politically correct lens. He's
Right.
meaning it like, don't let them know if you really stand for Jesus or not, because you're going to turn some people away.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like that's another stigma that people are afraid of.
Gotcha.
Because
I see where you're going with it now.
Because when you lean into Christianity, a lot of people only will see the negative side, like
Right.
we were discussing earlier. They'll see the hypocritical,
The
religious,
hypocritical Christians,
traditional,
The judgmental. Yeah.
Christian. They won't see loving like Jesus.
Yeah.
They won't see that it's truth in love. Like,
Exactly.
yes, Jesus is the only way, period. And by slapping someone over the head with a Bible,
Right.
that's not going to get them any closer
Right.
to true salvation.
Saying, hey, you should do this and you should do that and you should repent and you should and you should and you should, and trying to like be the, I guess you could say, governing factor into telling them that they should be a Christian. It's not our job. Our
Yeah,
job is to
for
just
sure.
spread the news and love one another and
Yeah.
accept one another and respect one another.
Yeah.
And just, if they're reaching out for guidance, guide them.
Yeah.
You can't force it.
I think there's a level of excellence too.
Yeah.
And I feel like that doesn't get spoken of much either. And I feel like that's probably another reason why there's business owners that shy away from wanting to be Christian kingdom business owners, is because they think there's that idea, like you've probably seen it, a great example is like Christian apparel.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of really bad Christian apparel. Like it's just not good.
Right,
Or
yeah.
there's a lot of really corny Christian rap.
Yeah.
But you think that there's a part of it that's like, oh, just because you're a Christian, I'm going to support you. And I think that our God is such a great, majestic God that he deserves our best. If someone's at home, someone's watching, listening, and they're thinking, okay, I should probably be online. I should probably have a better social presence. I should have a better brand. I would say, think of how you can build your business brand as personable as possible.
Yeah.
Because people buy from people. And I think that that's where we look at the big names. We look at the Nikes and we look at their campaigns. And even within their campaigns of the huge trademarks that they've made, it's about people.
Right.
Like a beautiful thing is, I think it ties back to stories. It's like we are built on, like humanity as in a whole is built on stories.
Yeah.
Like we're built on how we share those parts of our community. And I believe that if you can truly tap into your story, and I mean, that goes back to scripture. It's like we overcome the enemy by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony.
Yes.
We overcome the enemy by the blood of Jesus and the word of our story.
It's like our power is in being vulnerable
Yeah.
and sharing our story. And like you just don't talk about sharing our story. It's huge. It's huge. And if you just like really open yourself up to that mentality,
Yeah.
which is real, you can make that your reality because it is reality. You can make it your reality, and you can actually start working from that foundation and start building what you really want to build.
And I'd take it even a step further too, is from that perspective of brand building for a business or even a personal business on social media, is when you are telling your story, it's valuable. But the caveat of telling your story is if you're telling your story without letting them into it and seeing themselves in your story,
Right.
then they're not going to connect.
If there's no relatability.
No, like if you're telling your story and it's all you focus, me, people will get to that story and be like, so why should I buy from this brand? Like just from like a marketing aspect, why should I buy from this brand? Because it helps you. And thinking back to that service piece too, it's like true selling is serving to me. It's like, and I feel like a lot of people that struggle, and this is kind of a bit of a tangent in itself, but I feel like a lot of people that struggle in selling are not seeing the benefits for the person that they're selling to. Because any great salesman is a great listener because they're there to serve. They're not there to say, these are all the things and all the reasons why you should buy from me because it's going to benefit me only. And the more that we can see that within, because social media.
Well, that takes away from the being genuine.
Oh yeah.
Because then they come from the space or the intention of selling whatever product they're selling. Their genuine intention is to gain.
Yep.
Personally.
Exactly.
When your genuine intention and your belief is in the product itself and how it can help your customer, client, whatever, that's where you start making sales. That's where the power and the influence is, and the relatability is within you and the client, and that's what lands a sale. I can't remember who I heard talk about that, but they talk about I think it might have been Ed Milet talking about the frequency of being genuine. And if you don't believe in the product that you're selling, people can sense that, and it drives them away.
Yeah,
like
people
100%.
can sense the neediness too.
Yeah,
I don't know if
the
you've
desperate.
I don't know if you've ever seen that before. It's like you've seen someone that's going to sell something, and you can literally smell the desperation on their voice. How you're literally helping them stay alive. And if you came in an angle, again, it goes back to serving, that you're going to be okay even if that person doesn't buy what you're selling.
Right.
And I think that that's what's, and again, this is all from a lens of how we present ourselves online. And I think that it all goes back to that intention, like you said, that essence, because people can smell fake now more than ever because we've seen it. We've seen the filters, we've seen the AI generated content where it's literally could be me and you talking right now, completely AI.
Yeah.
And you can sense it.
100%.
There's just that little bit, something is off.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the most important thing that most important practical thing that I would say for someone listening that's trying to figure out this whole social media world, that it's not as polished, it's not as scary as they think it is.
Yeah. It's a lot closer than you think it is too. And it's a lot more accessible than you think it is as well. But let me just add, it is very, very, very important because, I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
You have your personal relationships within your home, and then you have your personal relationships within your workplace, and then you have your personal relationships within your community if you go to church and if you go out and if you socialize, and then you have your online. Okay, maybe throughout my day I'm talking to 10, 12 people in person.
Yeah.
You know, that I actually have a personal relationship with, communicate with on a daily basis. Maybe more than that, but somewhere under 20, under 20 people.
Yeah.
You get on social media, it's unlimited. Sure. I mean, and some people have more than others, but well, okay. Are you seeking to grow your audience? Are you seeking to grow your connection? Are you seeking to grow your community online? It's a lot easier and a lot faster to grow a community on social media than it is in person physically.
Oh, 1,000%.
Obviously, I think everybody could agree with that, right? So when you're a business owner and you're an entrepreneur and you have no idea, no clue about social media or how to manage it or you know, work it or whatever, you don't know anything about it, you should probably learn. Because regardless if you're trying to manage social media for somebody and you need to learn it, the person you're managing it for still has to have a general idea of it, or they're not going to be able to tell you what they want and how they want it, and you're not going to be able to serve them the way that they need it to be served. And so even if you don't want to deal with social media on your business, for your business, like, you still need to learn about it. You still need to know about it, because in order to be effective with growing your online presence, growing your clientele, growing your customer base on social media, which is the fastest and most effective way to do it, you're going to have to know what you want your social media manager to do for you. And so I just think that, you know, regardless of what business you're in, whether you're doing the management, whether you're a Joe that paints walls, or whether you're Carlos that lays brick, or whatever you're doing, get a little bit of an idea of what you can do with social media and start playing in that, because, man, if you're not, you're missing out. You're missing out on so much. And I feel like, you know, a lot of people see social media as like evil. You know, they see it as like the problem of this community. Well,
Yeah.
and that's the same thing like we were talking about earlier. Okay, with AI, with a gun,
Yeah.
you can use something for good or you can use it for evil.
Yep.
The problem is not social media. The problem is the people that are using social media.
Yeah.
And so in order to live for a higher calling and to be a positive change in the community, even if you're not religious, to be a positive change in the community, to make a positive difference in your life and in your community's life, in your business, if you're an entrepreneur, which is who we're targeting here, use social media for good. But that's my goal. That's what I want to do, is I want to use social media for God's will. And that's why I started the podcast. I'm doing the Kingdom Business interviews, and any kind of business transaction that I ever go through, I want to make a positive difference in that person's life. And I want to lead them to Jesus. I mean, I want to lead them to eternal life. I want to lead them to all the good things that Jesus, you know, wants for us, and that he's died on the cross for us to have and to experience and to be, to live.
Come on.
That's what I want for people. I really do genuinely want that. Because I've seen the light. You know, I've been in the darkness. I've been pulled out several times, countless times. I can't tell you how many times. And just knowing that there's so many people out there that are still in the dark in the same type of way that I was, and that sharing, you know, what I know could literally change their lives for the better, regardless if they're religious or not.
Yeah.
That gives me a fire.
Come on.
That fuels a fire in me. It really
That's so
does.
good.
I don't know about you.
Oh, same.
So, but that was going to be another question I asked you.
Yeah,
It was like,
for
what do you feel like is the fuel to your fire?
That's so good. I would say a lot of it is that having people experience of the literal life-changing transformation that happens when you have a relationship with Jesus. Helping people see that. Also my kids and my family, that legacy, not from a vain, selfish angle, but as an angle of, and I love the way Ed Milet always puts it, like you could be the one. You could be the one to be the change for
Until the one shows up.
Until the one shows up.
I love when he drops that in a speech.
I love that. The way I took the red version of that, and I like to say that I love to be the catalyst of change for my entire lineage. Essentially being the one till the one shows up. And I feel like by choosing to do so, that ripple effect will go on into eternity. Because a lot of times we don't see all the people that we impact. You know, it's like you mentioned, when we're on social media, we probably we'll never see this side of eternity, all the people we impact. But man, how beautiful will it be to get to heaven, and after we make it into heaven, Jesus is like, I want you to meet some people. And it's literally...
Look at all these people that you affected in a positive way.
See these people that are here because you chose to take time to let them know that Jesus cared about them. And Jesus, it's just like a sea of people.
Imagine being at the gates of heaven,
Yeah.
and God shows you this amazing person that you would have been if you'd have just followed his guidance and just stuck to his word and obeyed him. Like, you can imagine that it's going to be 10 times, 20 times, 100x, 1000x better than what you want and what your imagination is for what you see yourself in the future, for who you see yourself as in the future.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, and I agree. I think it's, and I think also the crazy part about that is God knows the end from the beginning, and God has already created you as that person now.
Yeah.
To tie it back to the whole chiseling metaphor of chiseling off the pieces that aren't you, and I feel like our whole life is a going back to who He's already created us to be. Because I truly believe that everything that we need to be that person is already in here. And a lot of times we feel like we have to become to get to that thing that we're reaching from. But what if we looked at it the other way?
Right.
Like, what if we looked at it, okay, that person that's in heaven, that perfect, but that amazing person that God has created us to be, He's there. What would He do in this moment right now to get to where I think I should be?
Yeah.
And when we think of it from that angle, it's so interesting, Because if we don't think of it
Then
from
you
that
can do something
yeah,
about it.
exactly.
If you don't, you're just condemned.
Exactly. Because if you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I'll never get there.
Right.
Like so many people, like, yes, vision
You
boards are
doom
great.
yourself.
Yes.
You basically doom
Yeah.
yourself.
Vision boards are great. Making goals are great. And you have to frame them in the right lens.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
you have to frame them from that God perspective of who he's already created you for. And that's what I think is beautiful about the Bible, is he's literally gave us a love letter, a whole manual of how to live this life.
Right.
And all these promises and all these things he's already declared about us. We just have to walk out. We just have to step into that. It's so good.
Man, God's just like, grow as you with me on my path. And it's like, you think about what you would become without all of that crap that you consume. You know, just imagine yourself without all of the attachment to all of the negative stuff that you've consumed in your life throughout your entire life.
So good.
Imagine yourself and what you would feel and what you would feel about yourself and how you would feel about yourself if you had just left all of that alone and never touched it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Imagine how pure you would feel.
Wow.
Now think about it like this. Jesus has already forgiven all that. Now imagine yourself with the opportunity and the ability to walk the rest of your life without all that crap through purity, and how good you can feel, because Jesus saves us. When you go get saved, like all that stuff's forgiven, so all that stuff gets chiseled off. And so now you're walking a new life. You've been born again. You've been renewed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is Renew Coffee, by the way. It's the name of the coffee
Yes.
shop. And so, like, you know, that gives me some excitement just to know that, like, hey, doesn't matter what you did yesterday, and we talked about this a little bit already, but you can walk in purity, and you can be blessed. Like, you're going to be blessed for that.
Yeah.
And the only thing that is preventing you from getting the blessings that God wants for you and that God has in store for you is by allowing the enemy to tack on and give you all of this crap, and you're eating all of this crap, and you're consuming all of this garbage. You're just disconnecting yourself from the blessings.
Yeah.
You're just bogging yourself down and slowing yourself down and disconnecting yourself from the positive, awesome future that God has in store for you. You praying is you talking to God. You reading the Bible and reading God's word, getting connected with fellowship, you know, people of God, community of godly people that seek God, and then listening to people speak throughout the Bible and teach the Bible. That's all God talking to you, right? And so a lot of people, they're like, oh, well, I pray, but they never get into the Word.
Yeah.
So they're just talking to God, and they're not listening to God. And so that goes back to the scripture: be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry, but specifically slow to speak, quick to listen. They're missing the quick to listen part in that scenario. But if they're not praying and they're not seeking the word, completely disconnected, there's no communication to God. There's no connection. If there's no communication, there's no connection. If you and I couldn't communicate, we wouldn't be here.
No.
If my wife and I didn't communicate, we wouldn't have a very good relationship.
No, definitely not.
Same thing with God. If you don't communicate with God, you're not going to have a good relationship with Him.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to a struggling entrepreneur that may be dealing with distractions, deception, that may be discouraged, that may just want to be given up, just like at that point right now? What advice would you give to a young entrepreneur that's just really struggling in their journey right now?
A few things. First, I would say what we mentioned earlier of I would really take an honest assessment of how much time you are spending with God. And like real relationship with God, not reading your devotional, and that was me for the longest time. Like, I love the Bible app. If you have the Bible app on your phone, you can get all your check marks, and Mr. High Achiever myself loves to check those boxes. And that's been a big shift for me. But again, I know a lot of people don't have as much time.
Right.
And it is important to just get as much as you can. And I would say,
Have a plan.
yeah, have a plan. Because again, like when I go days without reading my Bible, I can feel it.
Yeah,
When,
me too.
when I go a day, I can feel it. When I go
100%.
weeks, my family can feel it.
Yeah.
Those that I lead can feel it.
Yep.
And I really feel like that would really be kind of more the prevention / if you're already there feeling like you want to give up, I would say, when's the last time you prayed? And not just prayed to complain, not just prayed to get the jackpot, pull the lever for the jackpot, God, but really sat with God and asked him what he wanted to do for you. And when it comes to entrepreneurs and business owners, I would ask you, when's the last time that you let God be the CEO and the boss and the person that's running your business?
Wow.
And like, when have you let him into a conversation? Like, it goes back to the coaching client with the general contracting. Like, I simply suggested, like, what about if you've got a potential client, you're going to inspect a house. What if you invited Jesus to go with you? What if you asked Jesus, is this the right thing that I'm supposed to do right now, down to each decision?
Right.
And I feel like it sounds so silly sometimes.
No, yeah.
But again, it's so important, because the more we put God into it, and the more that we invite him into the day, the more we feel closer to him. And I feel like that's a huge one. And then third, I would say definitely surround yourself with the right community.
Love that.
Get plugged into the local church, serve your local church. Because I can guarantee you will never, I feel like we'll never see all the opportunities that come from being obedient to God. And I feel like our obedience to God is how we can serve at some capacity our local church.
Yeah.
Because like there's nothing like the networking possibilities. Like, if you look at it from a benefit standpoint as a business owner, but more so than that, when you're fully whole, nothing missing, then it's an outpouring. And I feel like we should work from the overflow, because you can't pour from an empty cup.
Let me just backpack on that too.
Yeah, for sure.
Every single person that I've had on my podcast, aside from maybe one, has stated that as part of their advice that they give when I ask, hey, what advice would you give? Every single one of them. Getting involved with people in the church. Getting involved with people that seek Jesus, that can hold you accountable, that can see your blind spots. Every single person has given that same advice. So let me just stress the importance on that. And from me personally, through doing that, the benefits that I've gotten out of it and the positivity that that's brought into my life is night and day. So thank you.
Come on. And I would even take it even a small step further in the fact of, I really highly encourage you to get a mentor, to get a coach. And I wouldn't say that without having my own mentors and coaches.
Russ suggested that too.
And I say that from the perspective, and also, don't be afraid to invest in that. Yeah. Because that's an investment that's a return that you may never see until the other side of heaven. Right. And again, of course, it goes back to the right mentor, the right coach. But I say it as, because when you don't invest in yourself in that caliber, you don't have anything to lose. Because when I first started coaching, I was just trying to, cut my teeth as a coach. I needed to learn the skill. Right. I had free clients. Right. And a lot of those free clients, they didn't really get the results they probably could have gotten if they wouldn't have been paying clients. Whereas I've had paying clients that paid established money, definitely big investments, and they have seen it 10x'd because they had something invested. They put their blood and sweat and their own money into it. And this is another key thought when we think about money and we think about business. I really believe it's a spiritual game. Oh, yeah. Because money is literally just like, this is my phone case, it's like a piece of paper. And the spirit and the intention that we put behind it, that's what the money's worth. Like, I would strongly encourage you to get a coach, get a mentor. And I love that Russ mentioned that as well. Yeah. Because
you know what he said is, he said for the longest time, he was thinking he couldn't afford it. Yeah. And then he just got to the point where he's like, he can't afford not to.
Exactly.
And when he said that, I was like, man.
That's the key.
That gets you thinking.
And I mean, if you even think of the greats. You think of the great sporting You think of LeBron spends over $1 million a year on his body, on coaches, on nutritionists, on trainers. Why would you not, as a business owner, spend that on yourself in order to grow your business?
And Michael Rendigan, the owner of Doc's Roofing, I interviewed him as well. He said the same thing. He said, how do we get the wisdom that we need? We go to those who have walked before us, the ones that already have the wisdom. They've already been through it. They've already walked the path and come out on the other side. Yeah. Those are your coaches. Regardless whether you're paying for them or not. And that's another, that can go back to getting into a group and a community, because you can get that coaching through other avenues as well. You can. And so, I mean, it's a lot harder to do it that way.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Not many people are willing to give up a lot of their time for nothing.
No, that's great.
But anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, and that's the whole reason I even got into this field, is because I know what it's like to sit in the shoes of someone who has followed God or questioned follow God, may have said they were following God, and been in the space of just literally wanting to give it up, ending it all. Like I've been there plenty of times. And I am forever grateful for those that invested in me to say, no, there's more for your life. Like it doesn't end here. Like, yeah, you may face failure. And I feel like there's such a level of resiliency that has to be built in an entrepreneur, because you've got to be resilient, because we face rejections daily, if not hourly. Because if you're in sales and entrepreneur, I'm sure you're getting no after no after no. And that, when not released or channeled somewhere else, or having someone that can hold the space for you to feel that, but understand that that's not your identity. And I think that's so important. And dude.
Someone else's opinion of you does not have to become your reality.
Exactly.
So that's really good advice, man. I really appreciate you sharing that and sharing your story and coming and sitting down with me for 2 hours.
A long time. I know my wife's probably like, babe, are you alive?
I think she texted me. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up there.
Sure.
Thank you guys so much for joining us on another episode of Kingdom Business Interviews. Hey, Red's got a podcast of himself. You want to tell him about that one? You want to tell him about your podcast?
Yeah. So I have a podcast. It's mostly on YouTube. You can find me at Red Wallace, Better Than Best Academy. If you Google search that, it should be one of the first ones that pops up. But if not, I'm sure I'll send you the link so you can have that in the description.
Send me the info and I'll put it in the description.
Definitely. And then if you're on social media, on Instagram, TikTok, I'm on there at coach.redwallace. You can find me there. And I'd love to connect with you and to really help you chisel away all those parts of you that aren't you, and really start living into the identity that God's created you to be.
Love that, man. And I'll put all your ats and everything in the description too. And again, thank you guys so much, and we'll see you on the next one.